The gun debate has been taking this country by storm. With valid points on either side, it's hard to tell who's going to win out. Instead of adding to the confusion, we wanted to go straight to the source. So we decided to take a look at one of our founding fathers as he scribes one of this nation's founding documents. To settle this age-old argument, it's James Madison and his roommate, TJ.
So that whole freedom of speech thing I wrote was a straight banger. Had everyone in Johannesburg talking about, by George. And that wasn't just because he was leaving early with that Negro woman. No, they earnestly enjoyed my wares. Now, for my next drop. When it comes to guns, I must...
Thomas, please! Stop with the infernal racket, the music, it's incessant. I'm trying to write the Bill of Rights.
Yo, for the last time, it's TJ. TJ, don't interrupt you while you're writing your amendments. Don't interrupt TJ when I'm listening to my Ludwig.
Anyway, where was I? A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms.
Dude, this party is so clutch. Today really sucked. I had to wake up super early and plow these stupid fields. And by plow, I mean supervise my slaves as I beat and whip them.
You want to sleep in tomorrow? Wish granted. I got a whole thing, trust me.
Thomas, is that Franklin and Hancock and the Congress? Did you invite them? No, Thomas, not this weekend. I told you.
Dude, you're still living with this guy? Sorry, bro. I keep saying the war's over. Find some other civilian's house to take over. But he's all, my documents, my precious amendments and documents. It's like, hey, James Madison, here's an inalienable right for you. You suck.
Since James has started writing his amendments, it's been like, Thomas, turn down the music. Thomas, stop playing with my heirlooms. Man, this country's already dividing us. Before all this, it was J-Man and TJ pouring tea down the shore, stealing spokes from B. Frank's wagon.
Are you sure this pocket square looks okay on me? Man, are you serious, B. Frank? You look like $100. Well, I appreciate that. I mean, I've only ever shot 30 or so. Well, you can hardly tell. Man, get TJ up here, that party animal.
Guess the party's upstairs. My God.
Now, y'all listen to me. Okay, y'all can party and carry on and do everything you want to do in this world, but you will not put another cup on my cherry wood table sans coaster, okay? Let me catch it again and I will drag your hindquarters from here and throughout this entire Louisiana Purchase on God.
Really, only police officers should have guns. I mean, it only makes sense. They being the ones to protect and to serve.
Now, listen, here's the thing. I don't want to be that guy, but James Madison is literally worse than Britain's tyranny. It's not even close.
Hey everyone, it's Mathias.
I'm Geoff.
We got another topic for you.
So hit the bell to subscribe and form your opinion now.
And here's why you're wrong. Yo, hey, second installment. It's your guy Mathias
And Geoff,
and we are here to chop it up about yet another topic, one that is pretty recurring. If you guys are watching this thing on YouTube, then you probably saw the content before. It's pretty cool, I suppose.
historically accurate.
Historically accurate. Completely historic. That was actually their living quarters. This is actually a document.
My house, yeah.
It's very well-founded historical information. Just look it up.
So if you haven't seen a YouTube video, be sure to check it out.
Yeah, please do. Again, this is so Geoff Mathias, BlackGround Talks, BlackGroundcontent on YouTube, and then BlackGround614 on Twitter and Instagram. And we're going to jump into another one. We're talking about the gun debate. So, I mean, a lot of stuff has happened
really throughout the course of human history, but more prevalently, I suppose, over the past couple of years with regards to the gun debate and the different things with regards to like school shootings and mass shootings and things like that. Very terrible, tumultuous events that have happened that have made people kind of reconsider, or at the very least start considering how we view guns' role and maybe in our society, or how we handle guns, or how we handle like people's rights around guns. Now, we kind of come to this thing with two differing viewpoints. I'm gonna throw mine out there, and then Geoff, I can let Geoff definitely throw his out there.
Yeah.
Two, that way we kind of have an even platform. My personal idea is that, or feeling, I guess, because there's no like kind of objective right or wrong here. So I mean, I think this is kind of something that you have to kind of consider in the context of everybody's different experiences and how everybody views rights and things around guns. But I personally, I don't think that I don't think it's a good idea to take guns away from the populace. I think that unless you've done something specific, or maybe like your mental state is somewhere in specific that would kind of restrict that right in of itself, kind of something that is empirical, then I don't think you should have that right restricted beyond the measurements that are currently instilled. I personally think that the inalienable rights that we are given kind of as a populace do mean something. And before we kind of get into it a little bit deeper, that's kind of really, that's kind of the extent of it. I just think that we have specific rights for specific reasons, and I definitely agree. Yeah, these things are terrible, horrible things that have happened. Every one of the cases that we can name pretty readily, and we don't have to get too deep into the cases. And I mean, and actually Geoff can posit his points too, but just to say that I think that we have specific rights for reasons, and once we start restricting those, we start going down perhaps a more dangerous path than having them takes us down. So yeah.
And personally, I'm not in favor of guns, and I would be completely fine with their removal. And I don't agree with the statement that if you were to take away guns, then you would start progressing on this, or even devolving, I guess maybe a better word, onto this like decline. I don't necessarily think that would happen. I'm in favor of gun removal, and I think it could potentially prevent situations like this from happening.
That's fair. Okay, so I mean, it kind of just, to kind of enter in, I guess the question I would ask about when it comes to like removing guns is because the lawful, the lawful use of guns. If we just bring into like perspective of like when people are typically like the lightning rod for the gun debate is the NRA, right? Because the NRA is the largest, like 5 million plus members. All of which would advocate heavily for owning a firearm over having that restricted. And I think something that's interesting is that, literally none of the people that have been responsible for these mass shootings are NRA members, right? There's people that own guns. Some of them own guns illegally, right? So even if you take that out of the conversation, which I think it's a valid portion of the conversation, I just think that it's something that we don't have to necessarily add in. I think one of the issues with the argument is that guns are typically viewed as an equalizer in spaces, where in which, if you're being attacked or something of that nature, essentially you're relying on you being able to maybe beat a person or a group of people if they're attacking you. Whereas, I would personally, I don't personally
anybody that's trying to attack me out there, you don't know this information. You don't know when we recorded this, so I could have easily got one in between that. So, but just keep in mind, I mean, in the event that I don't own a gun, right? You know, if somebody is attacking or somebody seeks to attack me, what's my equalizer? What's my equalizing force? And gun is there's a lot of preventative measures for guns. Like a lot of times, just having a gun and being able to show the gun in that space if you're being assaulted or whatever, it kind of stops it, or prevents attackers from pursuing it any further. So I don't know, man. I just think it in the right space, these things can contribute to safety, can contribute to empowerment. I think that there are terrible people that have misused that, and I'm not saying that that's a good thing at all, but I don't think that the inverse, that the solution is getting rid of them, because now you're just at the mercy of whoever is more physically imposing in this space.
So guns, you mentioned, can be used as a deterrent of sorts, and naturally I would agree with that. You know, if you
said you would agree,
I would agree with that.
Okay.
It can be used as a deterrent. For instance, if someone's about to like pick a fight with someone, and then they notice that, oh, this person has a gun, yeah, that can be a reason not to engage. I think also the converse is also true, is that people can feel more empowered when they have a gun or a firearm, and that could enable them to engage in aggression or violence that normally they wouldn't be able to do.
That's okay. I mean, is that the argument?
So I'll pause it.
I definitely agree with that. So I'm not at all saying that I disagree with that as a concept. I'm saying that that's against the law, right? So I'm like this is something that we can actionably do something against. If somebody points a gun at somebody and says, "Hey," like, you know, saying, "Ain't nobody messing with," like, that's a robbery, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? Somebody could pull somebody with a gun, like I'm robbing or whatever, like that can happen. But that, like, these are things like our laws can constitute and can actually actionably do something against.
After they're committed.
Yeah, naturally after they're committed, sure. But here's, I guess, and this is the reason why I lean more towards having a gun, because, like, inversely, somebody showing their gun in the event that they're about to be robbed or something like that is not against the law, right? And even more so than that, like, that robbery can still happen, right? And I would probably say it's a higher likelihood if I know for a fact that person cannot have a gun, and I'm a person that would rob somebody, why not? Like, you know what I mean? If I live in one of these countries that, you know, they restricted gun, and the numbers flesh this out as well. But, like, if I live in one of these countries that I know for sure my victim doesn't have an equalizer, they don't have a gun, right? They don't have this thing that I know, you know, levels me if I'm irresponsible in this space. And there's like a lot of these YouTubes. I was watching this YouTube video a couple of days. Actually, I guess it was like a week or so ago. And it was like this attacker trying to, like, force this woman into his car. Like, it was like late at night. She's walking to her car, and he gets out of his car and tries to force this woman into his car, and she pulls a gun out and shoots him twice, right? And this guy's like laying on the ground. I don't know what happened to the guy, right? It was just this security cam footage, but I don't know if this guy died or what have you, or what the heck happened with this guy. But when I see something like that, I'm like, in that situation, the person that was assaulting the victim didn't have a gun, right? If we're going strictly off the physicality of these two parties, this guy wins, right? This guy wins. Mm-hmm. This guy forces his woman to, and who the heck knows what happens with her from that point. Mm-hmm. And she did have something that swung the odds in her favor. Mm-hmm. And so, if you're asking me which one of those things would I roll the dice on? Would I roll the dice on somebody having a gun and, like, doing something illegal? And if somebody has a gun and they threaten somebody else with a gun, they don't know if that other person has a gun, right? So, like, there's also, like, this other inherent kind of threat that's kind of happening there.
I mean, mutually assured destruction isn't my preferred course.
Listen, mutually assured destruction, at the very least, people are less willing to walk into mutually assured destruction than I just know that I'm I'm larger and more physically imposing to this person. They're gonna more than likely be like, okay, I'm gonna go into that situation. Mutual assured destruction is gonna at least make you think twice. Be like, I don't want to destroy myself either, right? So like, regardless of how much I want to rob this person, if I think, man, this person might also have a gun, like that thing might stop me. It's the same kind of thing with like if somebody's just as big as me, like bullies, they typically aren't going to pick on somebody that's like larger than them and more physically imposing to them. Not because of the fact that they're like, yeah, this guy's just going to fight it to the death. They're really thinking like, that's the thing I don't want to happen, right? But if somebody's smaller, they're like, the recourse isn't naturally going to happen, or they're not going to feel as threatened by it. And so I don't know. Like, I think each scenario has a margin of error.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
that's the reality, especially because, I mean, however many millions of guns are already out there in the world, it's not like they just magically disappear, so it's not like...
Well, yeah, I mean, even if you give yourself the dream scenario, let's say in some kind of wild dream scenario, you're saying guns are not allowed, and then in the course of 2 weeks, we're able to track down every single gun in America and remove them from the populace. Right? Now what? Now, a person my size, weight, and strength can go to somebody that, is, let's say 75 pounds lighter, a foot and a half shorter, and that happens to just be walking away from an ATM, and I'm robbing that person with a guaranteed result, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, that person has no physical recourse. We might think about pepper spray or tasers or something like that, but like, that's even if they would allow tasers in that dream scenario, which let's say they do, that doesn't guarantee that it's going to have an effect. You get one shot with a taser, like, you know what I mean? And that's if you're agile enough to be able to get this thing out quick enough. And same thing with like a blade. People talk about blades as well. I'm like, do you know how unlikely it is that you're going to be able to pull a blade and then save, because you're typically aiming a gun away from yourself, right? A blade, you're going to have this thing out and it's like a sharp pointed object that's out there in the open, right? Whereas a gun has like a very linear direction, hopefully from its barrel to your target. So, and then in a fight, and things like that, like, it's a lot more likely that you're going to hurt yourself with a blade than a gun, just by numbers. And so I just think that it's like I think we're not operating in an error-free, that none of these have an error-free margin, right?
Agreed.
Like there's bad people that want to enact violence in either of these scenarios. It's just one of these scenarios, you give yourself some kind of chance. Whereas the other one, you don't have a chance.
But even in this scenario where people are allowed to have guns, not everyone does. So you mentioned that with guns and allowing people to have gun ownership, you're giving people a chance to have an equalizer of sorts.
Right.
But at the same time, it's not necessarily an equalizer in every situation, right? Because, if you're a person that's deciding that, I don't want to have a gun, or I choose not to have a gun, and someone else chooses to have a gun, naturally that's not an imbalanced situation. Granted, it's a situation that you chose.
Right. Well, but I'm saying we're laying out two different scenarios here. We're laying out one where nobody has a gun. Now there is no equalizer. Now there is, like, in that situation, a gun would be an equalizer, no matter who you gave it to, really, because the effect of having a gun is really the same on either side, right? Like, if I have a gun, people aren't like, oh, this guy's huge. People are like, oh, this guy has a gun, right? Kind of the same thing, like, with either one. Like, now if the smaller person has a gun, it's like, oh, this guy's tiny, but he has a gun, right? So I think, like, we're talking about the same kind of scenario, like win-loss kind of scenario. Typically, the person with the gun in that scenario would be able to maneuver the situation.
Right.
Now, the problem that we're saying, that I'm positing, is that, like, let's say in a scenario where nobody has guns. Now, me walking home, if a guy 7'10", 400 pounds, wanted to, rob me and kill me, like, they make very quick work of that, right?
But I guess I guess the end result, though, I would expect it to have fewer fatalities. I mean, yeah, there might be.
No, there's that, but that's just not that. That's not even leveled in any of the places that people have restricted guns. I know there's an expectation, but you're taking away people, like right, like you're saying that guns are the things that I think thinking that is like guns are the things that like that's like thinking guns are the things that make people rob people, but it's not. Gun is a tool in a robbery, right? But if somebody wants to rob you and they know you don't have a gun, now they're bigger, they're stronger, they're faster. That gives you the same real advantage.
So you're saying that a gun, if a gun cannot push someone to commit a crime that they wouldn't otherwise commit. I would not agree with that.
I think the thing is hard to conceptualize that because we don't live in the inverse, right? It's impossible for us to live in the inverse. Guns exist. Guns exist in our society. So somebody robbing you because they have a gun, there's no flip side that we can have to be like, but if guns didn't exist, would you still be doing this? You don't know that, right? Like, who the heck knows?
True, but
so I'm saying I'm not trying to lodge an argument based on something that I could possibly conceptually believe in this other like alternate universe. I'm saying specifically I don't know that whatsoever. But what I do know is that guns exist because in this scenario that we're running, if no guns existed, I don't know whether or not somebody would rob somebody, but I'm saying that this person wants your money and they're using physicality to get it, right? The threat of force. And because they're using the threat of force to get their gun, I don't think that the only threat of force that they would be willing to use would have been a gun.
But I guess just knowing people and like motivations and things like that, like I feel like if people are given a certain tool, it can empower them to engage in a decision that they normally wouldn't have engaged in.
I mean, that's sure. I mean, but that's not part of the algorithm, is it? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not trying to say that somebody without a gun isn't as empowered as somebody with a gun. Like, we know that to be the inverse. Like, somebody with a gun feels a certain amount of power or authority in a room because they have the most effective force, right? Like if 10 people have a bat, but you got like an AK-47, it's like you have seemingly more power than all 10 of these people because, like, there you go. But it's like this idea that, like, even in that scenario, it's like, you know, those 10 people with bats, if they don't have a gun, but if they know you don't have a gun, but they got bats, then they want to attack you. They're going to attack you still. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So like, if we keep reducing back, you know, the amount of force, I think that if we do it to the furthest extremes, nobody has guns, but there's still going to be, like, you know, a different level of force that everybody's able to exert, right? Mm-hmm. And now we're just relying on.
Agreed. I mean, there's still people at disadvantage, but
the most bad.
But
or the really most effective person that using force.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Mm-hmm. But I guess personally, I would still expect the number of like fatalities from events like that like to drop because like one, you can't do like a mass shooting if you don't have a gun. You know, the closest thing you get like a knife attack that you see sometimes in like China.
How much of gun violence do you assume is mass shootings?
I mean, for sure, that's true. I mean, most of it's like domestic disputes, I'm guessing, or.
I mean, it's not even most of it's domestic disputes. It's just like less than 0.2% of gun violence is mass shootings. So granted, those things are gruesome and grotesque, but like it's also like a month in Chicago, right? Like that's like the problem. Like we hyper focus on gun violence when it's like these like spaces that we can hyper focus on because like, you know, these are tragedies for sure. Any of these things are tragedies, but like here's the thing: the place with the most restrictive gun. Chicago is one of the places that has Chicago has the most restrictive gun laws in the United States, and they have some of the highest gun violence in the United States.
You know what I mean?
I get what you're saying, but I feel like there's also an emotional impact that, for instance, on the role of mass shootings, yeah, the percentages are going to be super low in terms of how often they occur, but the social impact of that is much, much larger. I mean, you could see it by...
I think that's hard. I think here's my problem with that. Here's the biggest problem that I have with that. I would argue that those things are terrible, right? I think the media it uses it to fuel it. You know what I mean? As far as like that situation, but like, why would you think that that's worse than a kid growing up and literally every single day hearing about somebody else dying from gun violence?
But I mean, I'm not arguing
like
against
that in their neighborhood or like around them or something like that. Like, because you said like that was like more traumatic or like that has a bigger impact, but it doesn't. Like I would say I'm not going to assume the emotional impact of anybody. I'm just going to know that by the numbers, these mass shootings aren't the largest problem.
But I mean, regardless, this is still trauma that's generated by guns. Like I feel like,
yeah, sure.
Like I think like that type of emotional weight. Whereas like, for instance, like the example you brought, with like a child who is aware or like knows people who have personally passed away because of guns or gun violence or even just accidents, versus even like kids like going to schools and having to go through like shooting drills, like live shooting drills, or for instance, parents having to decide like what kind of backpack or like what kind of like different types of shields to buy that they can put into like their kids' backpacks to protect them in emergencies and things like that. Like all this to say that like, I mean, guns, the effect of guns, like, I mean, violence is obviously like the largest impact, but I think the type of emotional weight that it also carries, to me would justify the removal. Like I think that type of psychological effect can have consequences for someone growing up.
You're assuming that here's my problem. The assumption that taking away violence is going to taking away guns is going to take away abject violence is wrong. Like, I don't believe that taking away guns means that people aren't killing each other. You know what I mean? And then I'm in my, if I had to run the algorithm, I would probably say that like it prevents situations where somebody might die as well. Like, if somebody wanted to attack me, if 10 guys wanted to come up and attack me right now and I had a gun, that might prevent that interaction from even happening. Like, I might just show it, boom, let's say none of them have a gun. Bam. We have now stopped this event from happening. If nobody has guns, that event happens and I die. Now, if 10 guys want to attack me and I have a gun and I shoot and kill 10 people, I don't feel bad for those 10 people because they want to attack me and kill me, right? You know what I mean? Like, and I'm not saying that that's like a good thing to happen. Like, that's not an abject good, but that's like a better good than 10 people just being able to be like, hey, we have mass, we have numbers, we can just attack people. We can just, this is like the kind of activity that we can carry out. And I think that like, I think it's a flaw to think that, you know, let's remove guns so that we can take care of this violence problem, because like I don't think it stops. I really don't think it slows down.
I guess some on the other side, like I think there would be fewer deaths. And I mean, I know this is super hypothetical. I don't know.
Well, it's not even hypothetical. Like, countries have ran this algorithm and it has not fared well. You know what I mean? Like the Australia buyback, like when like it was like a forced gun return, you know what I mean? So like they essentially posited it as like, oh, you can just buy back your weapons, you know, like the government buys back your guns or whatever. But it didn't decrease the amount of violence. It didn't decrease the amount of like deaths and things like that. What it prevented was somebody having an actual recourse. Like, people have, it's not as if this thing has not been ran. I think there's certain there's a want to believe in like that guns are this source of abject evil, and I think people do bad things, right? And well, yeah, for sure, like guns are a very quick way to some of those bad things. Like, because I don't trust people. Like, okay, let's say like my home, right? Or your home. Somebody breaks in, and let's say like their intention is to like rob you or kill your family, whatever kind of evil somebody can have on their mind, and you have an equalizer and a gun, right? Do you feel that that gun added to the evil in that scenario, or do you feel that that gun helped you in that scenario?
Can you give me a good scenario one more time?
Let's say you're a gun owner, and somebody breaks into your home. Let's say it's 2:00 in the morning. Somebody has jimmied open a window in your house. You don't know what they're doing, right? They have jimmied open a window in their house. You don't know what their intentions are, but you can pretty much assume somebody breaking into your home, it's not to, leave cookies on your shower. Like they're here to do some evil. You give them a warning. You say, "Hey, I have a gun." Put your hands in the air, lay flat on. You know what I mean? Like you do the whole procedure. You try your best to preserve life in this situation, and they lunge towards you. You fire. You kill them. Do you think that your gun was an evil tool in this space, or do you think you were using it righteously?
No, I mean I don't think guns in of themselves are evil.
All right. So what? So that's the thing. So we're agreeing that guns, while expediently effective at exactly what they do, aren't the evil mechanism, right?
Agreed.
And because of that, we have to reason that removing them from the space doesn't remove the intent of the people behind the evil mechanisms. If somebody wants to do some kind of evil, they're just going to find another way to do it. That's not a gun.
But agreed, like it doesn't take away the intent, but it does take away the measure. A person might not have the means to cause,
but it also completely levels in the measure as well. Somebody breaks into your home. Let's say the person that breaks into their home, they're people are typically, if they're doing that, let's say they're breaking into their home, they have some kind of means to be able to effectively execute whatever they're trying to execute, right? Not hopefully, but like in any kind of reasoning like that would likely be the situation. So they're making this attempt, and for all you know, at your family's life, and that's all you can assume. I know, if I'm in the house, if I'm at home with my family, and somebody's breaking into my home, I don't have time to run through the algorithm. Maybe this guy is just crazy. Maybe they're hungry. Maybe the only thing I'm thinking is my priority is the protection of my family. So it doesn't matter what the heck else is happening. What's really going through their head. I'm gonna give them a warning. I'm gonna try to preserve life. I'm gonna try to be like, hey, I don't want this to go the deadly direction, but if it does, I'm willing to take it there to protect the people in my home. And I think that's the scenario that I'm running through with regards to, the gun isn't this abject evil. The gun is actually a tool of good in somebody's hands that knows how to use it and is using it in a righteous situation. In that scenario, you protecting your family and your loved ones, all these other things, yourself even, right? That's good. And what I'm saying is that remove the gun from that scenario, that situation can end a lot worse.
That's true. I'm not gonna.
Well, and I think the point that I'm making is that if you level a society that nobody has guns, right? That person breaking into your home just knows you don't have a gun, right? They might not have a gun, but they might know that typically if people's breaking into your house, they've been watching you, right? So they know let's say they know that they're stronger than you, they're taller than you, they're faster than you. Maybe that's all the information they need to know to be like, if I break into this guy's house, the likelihood of me winning this fight, this physical altercation, is higher in my end.
Right. So agreeing with everything. We're ending up talking in circles.
Well, I don't. So here's what I'm saying. There's there's a logistical end to that, right? At that point, we've landed okay. That's the society that we could easily land ourselves in if we just remove guns. And I think the thing that I'm asking is would you prefer that scenario, running through that scenario, which would happen all the time? Because it does. Listen, that happens all the time, right? People break into people's houses without a gun. Nobody has a gun. that exact scenario happens all the time when people have guns. Imagine if they know for a fact that you don't. You know what I mean? Like, think about how much a lot of the preventative measures they do, they lamp on you, or they, I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with the hood term, but lamping also like means like, you know, you're essentially camping outside, like you be watching, you're seeing what's going on. You're like on the street, you know, if you're like kind of camped out in your car or whatever, just to watch and see. That's the reason why, like, you know, my mom, you know, when we were kids, she used to be like, you know, if you ever see any strange cars like kind of parked and you see it for a long time, like, let me know, like, you know what I mean? Because like that could be something, that could be like somebody trying to set something up. And so this idea that, let's say, I mean, I'm just running through that scenario. There's 1,000 other ones that are kind of like it, but running through that scenario, that person, there's a lot less investigation that person has to do. You don't have a gun because it's legal to have guns. You don't have a gun. I can break into your home pretty successfully without any kind of worry there, right? And the only thing I'm saying is that, like, I run that algorithm. I'm like, I would much rather, and it sucks because, like, it's not like I want people to die. Like, I don't want these mass shootings. I don't want any of that. Like, in most of the scenarios that we're talking about as far as mass shooters, like, these people shouldn't have had guns, right? Which I would say, like, you know, we just have to apply the laws that are present, because most of the laws that are present would have prevented those people from having guns. Like, they got them from, they stole them. There was like a lot of other measures they didn't have guns. The guns being public weren't the problem, because if the laws were applied correctly, then they just wouldn't have it. And it's just to say that, like, I run through that scenario and, like, people have the right to, like, protecting themselves, and, like, that's that ability to protect themselves. And it spawns a lot farther from, like, just, like, civilian to civilian, right? Because, like, I'm like, people write, like, an interesting, like, juxtaposition is to be like, people to be like, I don't trust the government, I don't trust Trump, I don't trust any of these things, but your only argument is to give Donald Trump all the guns, right? Like, that's, like, because, like, he's, like, the master, like, the chief of like the army, executive in chief of, like, of the army, and you're just like, I don't want anybody to have guns except for them, right? And, like, that's like, that also doesn't make any sense. Like, and, like, I think there's, like, an extension of this argument that goes into, like, you know, how people kind of view socialism and stuff like that, and people are like, you know, Donald Trump is a dictator and all this other stuff, and I'm like, listen, you know what, if you're a dictator, you know, one of the first things you do, you disarm the populace, because you don't want the populace to fight against you, right? Like, you have to be able to crush the populace down, like, you are under my rule. You can't do that with an armed populace, right? Because an armed populace is going to the United States revolt against, like, the ruler. And, like, that's like a weird thing, because, like, Donald Trump does not want to be taken, like, it's the other side. It's like, we need to get these guns out of here, nobody should have guns. I'm like, you guys are trying to set this system up, and then, like, accusing him of, like, being, like, the person that's, like executing that. So it's like it's weird to juxtapose those two things. But yeah, it's just to say that, like, I think there's a lot of intersections in that argument, but it's like, which one of these realities are you more comfortable with? And I would say I'm more comfortable with the one where I have the right to protect myself and the right to protect my family.
And I personally am more comfortable with the reality where guns don't even enter people's thoughts because they're not there.
Right. Well, but we agree, like, guns are an abject.
But yes, we agree that guns in and of themselves don't have.
Guns don't enter people's thoughts. Then what do you do in that scenario where somebody's breaking into your house? Because guns haven't entered. I know that person doesn't have no gun. I'm just gonna walk up in here and take what I want to do. What happens now?
I mean, hey, I get it 100% that, like, you don't have
even the threat of a gun. If somebody were to yell, "Hey, I have a gun," like, there's some people that just have, like, signs it's kind of like the same like idea when people have like the ADT signs, like people have like NRA signs, like, hey, I'm a gun owner and I own a gun legally. So if you step on my that deters a lot of violence in a lot of places. Some people just have the sign.
Again, I understand 100%. Like, a gun's a deterrent. Like, I'm not denying that. It's just my own personal take is I
guess the question I'm asking is, what do you do with that situation? Like, how do you?
Yeah, I mean,
I understand your take. I'm just like, because my take, I would have to run through the algorithm. Like, I'm saying I'm willing to accept the loss. Like, one of these things, I'm like, I guess the thing that I'm saying is that I foresee one thing being worse than the other one, and in every scenario in which it's being ran, right? Like, people have ran this nobody has guns thing, and typically when somebody a populace is disarmed, it means other things are happening as well, right? There's like a populace isn't just disarmed and then you still have this representative republic, thing happening and this free will and all this other stuff. Typically, when you're disarming a populace, other things are happening as well. And so I'm saying that it's not something that has just happened, kind of separate from this other like political ecosphere, or social political ecosphere.
Yeah, I mean, I understand how like the Second Amendment like came about and stuff like that. Like, I get it. There's a fear of government. There's a fear of you want to have an option to protect yourself against. It's just, again, my own personal take. I'm against guns, and if it came to like someone breaking into my house and I didn't have a gun, yeah, it sucks for me. But
really, okay. I mean, listen. I mean.
But personally, I'm
just simple consistency. That's what I'm saying. So I was like,
I'm personally.
I don't know, man.
I don't want to say like okay with that, but like,
there's no scenario that I would be like, yo, like, if I know that there is this thing that I'm not gonna commit any of these, like, I'm not gonna do any kind of mass murders or anything like that. But like, I would be like, if I know there's this thing that this person, because like even let's say you don't even have a gun, but you have an NRA sign, right? One that says, "Hey, just to let you guys know, I'm part of the NRA. I have a gun," even if you don't even really have a gun. If this person's like, "It's illegal to have guns," this guy can't be the NRA. This guy doesn't have any guns at all. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's what I'm saying. Like, in a society that's constructed that way, where you're just, I hope nobody has guns. I'm like, listen, you're just now we don't have these like empirical like weapons of defense,
or at least not ones that are as effective.
No, yeah, not nearly as effective, and like ones that, yeah, I just think that I think one of the things that's hard to do is to imagine a world where I would never want to be like, oh, it just sucks to be me, right? Like, because like that can mean a lot of different things, right? And a lot of different scenarios in which we could just have these deterrents, right? And like, if we take away like the 2% of gun violences that are like these like mass shootings that like, it's not even 2%, it's like under 2%.
Right. Yeah.
If we take those away, which are terrible, horrendous events, like I'm not advocating for those events. Those are terrible, horrible, horrendous events. But I also think that, like, I don't know. I don't think that violence and like aggressive violence would stop. And I think that would we have no evidence to believe that it would die down either, right? Like, we're not the murder capital of the world, right? We're we're not the rape capital of the world, right? Like, for specific reasons. Like, there's other, like, what is that's right. Yeah, but our time guy is letting us know that we have to wrap this up. But yeah, I'm saying that there's a lot of different things that we are that don't happen because of guns, right? There's a lot of different preventative measures. I mean, if you can go to YouTube right now and like self-defense with guns or something like that, and you can see millions of videos of people effectively protecting themselves, like, you know, from aggressors. The aggressors don't have guns, and so the aggressors just could be more physically imposing, you know, larger. Maybe they're threatening that they can have a gun, but they don't really. I don't know, all these other situations. But
so I mean,
I'm saying that in both. I'm saying that the algorithm, the inverse is not necessarily supported, like, because the inverse does not happen. The inverse of having guns is not less violence. And in every scenario that they try to run it, it's not less violence. It's like, it's actually, like, in most cases, it's escalated violence because you don't have a preventative measure. You don't have this thing that somebody's afraid of approaching you, afraid of doing these other things, or, you know, because somebody else might have a gun.
I mean, I 100% get a gun as being a deterrent, as being an equalizer. I get it as being a way to protect yourself even against the government. I understand all of those different things. It's just my own personal preference would be, one, not having a gun, because I think the violence and the ability that it can cause, like, immediate death, like that sort of power.
If somebody were attacking you or in threat of attacking you, you wouldn't. If somebody, I don't know. When I think about protecting people, the first people that I imagine myself protecting are my nieces, right? Yeah. And it's just because, like, they're, you know, the most help, like, you know, kind of like, you know, most reliant on that, like, help. Like, they would need, like, this another physical, like, presence in that space. And when I imagine that, I'm like, my nieces were, like, asleep in the other room, and somebody was breaking into the home, and, like, I had a choice whether or not to be like, man, do I want to maim this person, or do I want to dead this whole situation so that I can know they're safe? I have no qualms whatsoever with, like, that person's gone. Once you've broken into their house, like, there's like in the UK, it's like these really weird laws. Like people can be, you can persecute, you can like, if somebody breaks into your home and you shoot them, and they can sue you, right? Like, there's
Italy's the same way.
It's really weird because I'm like, I would hate to live in that. Do you know how terrible, like, how horrible that would be to be like, I'm defending my home from these people that broke in? Like, no. That's why America's empirically different. That's why people, like, are like, oh, like, that, like, if that happened in Italy, if I'm, like, protecting my family and my possessions and myself and all that other stuff, and I get put in jail for that, heck no. Like, I don't want to live there. And I'm like, and that's what I'm like, I don't trust that people are good without the guns, and I feel like people are still going to try to commit these crimes. Like, some level of those crimes do exist even without guns being present. Now it's just, now I have to decide, would I prefer those things kind of get carried out, and now I don't have this stopgap, or would I prefer, you know, them to just be carried out and me not, you know, kind of have the ability to kind of stop those things. And that's, and just back to what I'm saying about, like, protecting my nieces, like in my head, like, I'm like, that's easy math for me. Like, that person's dead, right? Like, it's like not a super, like, funny thing, but it's like, it's an easy decision, right? Like, there's very little scenarios in which, like, I mean, I would lay down myself for my nieces, right? And so, like, it's just like, I don't see the negativity there, right? Like, that person shouldn't be breaking into my home, right? That person shouldn't be trying to attack me and my family. They laid that at their own feet. And hopefully, listen, that should be a preventative thing, right? Like, and that's the thing. Like, if you live in a society where guns exist, that a person being like, dang, like, I really want to steal this guy's possessions, you know what I'm saying? Like, I really want to do this thing, but who the heck knows? Like, this guy might have a gun. Maybe I don't rob them. That's a good idea. You know? Like, if you live in a society where guns are allowed, then, like, you have that fear. But you don't, like, again, I want to make it clear, like, when it comes to like mass shootings and stuff like that, all that stuff is terrible. And like if there was a way to prevent any kind of every single kind of violence, right? Like, oh heck, freaking yeah, like let's do that. But I would be remiss to be like, you know, people defend themselves with guns every single day. Guns are deterrent from several acts every single day. Things that the attacker's not trying to attack them with a gun. They're just using their hands, maybe a knife. I don't know what the heck. Like, that's what happens in other countries. And I'm just like, I don't think that, like, we're hurting those scenarios. Like, we're harming those scenarios. And those scenarios are a much larger case with regards to violence. And much, much more data to support it. So I think the data doesn't support that violence slows down when it's been tried to remove like guns. Like, it doesn't support that it's been slowed down. It's just, it ramps up because there's no deterrence now, or at the very least a less potent.
No, I mean, again, I completely get the side, you know. Again, kind of like what I mentioned before, I understand it's a deterrent. It means protection. I understand that. Those last examples you gave in terms of like breaking with your family, you know, you want to protect your family. I get, you know, 100% all those things. I'm not arguing against it. You know, if people want to have guns for those reasons, I get it 100%. I personally wouldn't want a gun because of that aspect of harming human life. But you know me, and I'm a super idealistic person that doesn't that tries to operate in a world that doesn't agree with those ideals. You know, like, I understand that the violence doesn't necessarily change if you lose a gun. I mean, if you like, were to take guns away, although I'd be curious to see what types, like, how the violence would change. I'm not saying the levels would decrease, but I'd be curious to see, like, the specific, like, I imagine that the violence would be different. And like, I don't know, like, homicide rates and things like that. Like, I don't know if those would change.
Same. I mean, everywhere that has tried it, it's the same. You don't have these mass shootings and stuff like that, sure. But like every country that touts like, hey, we don't have these mass shootings, they still have like horrendous knife violence, right? Like, people are knifing each other like all over the freaking place. But so it and like it, and in close range, like, knives, like, if you're like one-on-one, like, that's just as bad, if not worse, of a tool in death as a gun, right? Yeah, I feel like, yeah, I mean, just kind of factoring everything in. And again, like, it's not that, like, I want anybody to die. It's not like I want everybody hurt or anything like that. But, yeah, I don't imagine either of these spaces free of violence and free of this, like, harm that can happen. I just imagine the gun being a deterrent. And for my purposes, I would be like, you know, like, this... If I needed something to, you know, you have to store it correctly. You have to protect, you know, you have to run all the things that typically when gun violence happens in the home is because, like, there is some kind of misappropriation of the gun, right? They shouldn't have been doing this thing or this. There's a lot of different things that you shouldn't be doing with a gun that people do. And so I think if you are really diligent with that part of the equation, and even in the world, like, if like with you're like, I wouldn't have a gun because you want to preserve human life, but I would say, like, even if I didn't have a security system, I would put an ADT sign outside. You know what I mean? Like, that's a deterrent. Like, right? People see that and like, oh, I'm not gonna go there. Same thing with like an NRA. They're like, oh, I'm not gonna go there. That person might have a gun. And so, in a society that doesn't allow guns, that says, hey, everybody can't have guns, like, that sign doesn't work. So yeah, I just think that you place deterrents, like, guns can be used as a deterrent, and guns can be helpful in spaces where in which you need an equalizer. But, you know, that's kind of our side. Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for everybody that has tuned in. That if you haven't before, this is our second one, our second BlackGround Talks. The first one was on the Matrix. So if you are listening to this right now, and we're kind of wrapping up here, definitely, if you haven't watched the first one, go take a listen to that one, see our arguments on that one. That was pretty cool. But in any case, what do you think about the gun debate. There's a lot of different opinions, and there's a lot more opinions than just the kind of black and white ones me and Geoff have talked about in this one. So what do you think about the gun debate? Do you lean more with like Geoff's point of view, or in which we don't need guns or we shouldn't have guns, or do you lean more with my point of view and say like they're an inalienable right for a reason, and we should be allowed to have those unless naturally we've done something, breaking the law, something like that restricts that right. Let us know in the comments. We definitely want to hear. We definitely we pay attention to the comment section too. So like if you guys are making comments, like we'll definitely try to like answer those as diligently as possible. But in any case, definitely again follow us Instagram and Twitter, BlackGround614 at BlackGround614, and then we just fired up our Facebook. So yeah, at Blackground614 on Facebook as well. We're gonna start posting all the videos and things like that there for your viewing pleasure as well. Follow us on our platforms. We've got a lot of other stuff coming up, a lot of other content. We definitely want you to follow along on this journey, and check out our other content that we got up on the channel. Got anything else, Geoff?
No, that's it. Thanks for your time, guys. We appreciate it. Yeah.
All right, have a great one.
Dang it, my fault. I got into view.
Can you shut that?
Ever since James has started writing these amendments, it's been like, Thomas, turn down your music. Thomas, stop playing with my heirlooms. Before all this, it was
Try tilting your body a little bit this way, but still look at This is good. We're using it all, my little kid.
Guess the party's upstairs.
Franklin.